John Hughes versus Sam Raimi. This was suggested in a comment by Haymaker King, who has just kind of recently started popping up. Seems like a great guy. I like having his presence around the channel. Always great comments, always good conversation. And he suggested for a versus video, John Hughes versus Sam Raimi, which is a lot more difficult than it sounds. Because first you have to find that common thread. And that common thread at first appears to be whimsy. They're both extremely whimsical filmmakers. They're also both respected for what they do. Just to cut to the chase, Sam Raimi is the obvious choice. You should pick Sam Raimi. The Evil Dead 1 is incredibly inventive, incredibly creative, incredibly scary as well. Also, Sam Raimi's career is a bit varied because it's not just one specific genre. Just like John Hughes is primarily known for his teen films. Not that he didn't step outside of them. I mean, he is only known for comedy, though. I mean, he started off writing jokes for National Lampoon, went on to making the National Lampoon, or writing the National Lampoon movies. I mean, he made Home Alone 1 and 2 as well. But they're all within the vein of comedy, but he's best known for teen films, for reinventing the modern teen film. But Sam Raimi went from, Evil Dead, which is like gore-fest zombie film. He's also done Darkman, The Quick and the Dead Western. Of course, his Spider-Man trilogy. We all know about that. Arguably, he reinvented the superhero genre, and did it quite well. He's also made like sports films as well. For the Love of the Game, I believe he directed, which was an awful movie. So Sam Raimi is the obvious choice, mostly because of his creativeness, his inventiveness, his gimmicks, his bits, how he thinks to use a camera. Most of this is evident in films like The Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, and Spider-Man 2. Those are the films I would call his best films, and probably in that order as well. I'm shocked when I watch Evil Dead 1. I'm just shocked by the ingenuity of it. And also, if you have any context, if you know how that film was made, with the short film that they took around to possible investors, that was blood, sweat, and tears. That was a passion project, and thank God Sam had the talent, the complete energy. He has a lot of energy to pull through with it. So Sam Raimi should be the obvious choice, but the whole problem is I don't sound very passionate about that. So I'm gonna spice it up. These videos are supposed to be spicy. They're verses, after all. While I would never argue against Sam Raimi being the more valuable filmmaker, being the more incredible and creative filmmaker, Sam Raimi has never made a film that is nearly as good as The Breakfast Club. I think The Breakfast Club is beyond remarkable, beyond astounding, beyond itself. I think The Breakfast Club is a film beyond itself. And it's a romance, it's a comedy of a tragic comedy of tropes. But these tropes are just, art imitates life, life imitates art. So you know all of these different characters, and somehow John Hughes is able to tap into each one and make them full of pathos, full of pity, and evoke such an elation of empathy. And it's incredible. And I do think The Breakfast Club is well composed. And I do think that John Hughes is a better writer. I do think that John Hughes writes better characters. There is proper characterization in a John Hughes film. And it's not characterization that feels forced. I would charge Sam Raimi with the films that should have characterization. The Quick and the Dead, the Spider-Man films, Darkman. Every one of those films with forced characterization. Nothing feels believable. No piece of emotionality feels believable. Those are always my problems with the Spider-Man 2 movie, or Spider-Man 2 is the one that's considered the best, and I consider it the best as well. But my problem with that film is that it's far too whimsical for its own good. Where it's completely submerged in camp. So when something that should be actually tragic happens, it's not like it's a failure. and I don't feel anything. I just should feel a hell of a lot more. Whereas something like 16 Candles or Weird Science are completely drenched with camp, but they can make me feel things because John Hughes knew how to write these young, youthful, and these young and youthful characters who were just full of mistakes and accident prone, and wanted to love so deeply and so dearly. Hell, man, I get way more of a triumph out of Pretty in Pink. What a wonderful screenplay. I get way more of a triumph out of Ducky. You can keep your Green Goblin and Spider-Man fight. Eat My Shorts has more kinetic energy than that. I honestly believe that. Kinetic energy, emotional energy, all sorts of energy. The reason I'm saying Sam Raimi is because of that inventiveness in The Evil Dead, and because of that ability to jump around genres, to also experiment with genre and experiment with form within his own trilogy. I mean, each Evil Dead movie is arguably a different kind of film, you know, and it's to different effects. How successful he is. People love Army of Darkness. I loved it when I was 10, but now that I'm almost 30, I haven't even watched it in like 10 years. I'm not interested in Army of Darkness or Evil Dead 2. If I go to watch a Sam Raimi film, it is normally always and only The Evil Dead 1. Whereas I could put on The Breakfast Club right now and just be transported to a time that I didn't even live in. I could be transported to an emotionality, though, that is cosmic, that is unending, because America is unendingly obsessed with pop culture. Therefore, we will mimic what we see till the end of time, especially if what we see is as endearing and as truthful and as wildly authentic as The Breakfast Club was. John Hughes just didn't have that visual creativity. We were talking about films, after all. If this was a screenplay versus screenplay, a screenwriter versus screenwriter, John Hughes, every day of the week, no questions. I don't think I would actually get any challenges from that. But if we're talking about filmmaker, if we're talking about conductor of images, maestro sequences, we can only be talking about Sam Raimi in this respect. John Hughes was not interested in that. And we also shouldn't charge or belittle John Hughes with failing to live up to Sam Raimi's compositions and creativity. That would have ruined films like The Breakfast Club. That would have ruined films like 16 Candles, and certainly like Pretty in Pink or Home Alone. I think it would have ruined all of those films, because those are films that put character first, directly first. Those are films that put humor first. Those are films that put feeling completely first. If it was overcomposed, the worst part of The Breakfast Club is the only overcomposed moment of it, that kind of bizarre dancing sequence when they're all high and Emilio Estevez screams and breaks glass. That's the only part that's like, oh, don't lose me. And then they don't, because they have fucking group therapy afterwards and they all cry and shit, and it's heartbreaking again. But John Hughes, his films do not require a heavy-handed composition. What they require is constant empathy, constant witty writing, constant well-articulate writing, constant complications of characters, complications of tropes, even while you're in the process of actually forming the trope mythology that you are bringing to the table. So The Breakfast Club is by far 10 times better, a million times better than anything that Sam Raimi has ever directed. But Sam Raimi is easily the better visual filmmaker. I don't go into a Sam Raimi film looking for what I go into when I watch a John Hughes film. I watch a John Hughes film because I want to feel comforted. I want to think about other kinds of people, other kinds of characters, other kinds of tropes. I want to go into a time capsule as well and see, oh wow, things haven't changed. I'll listen to some groovy synth soundtracks. I want to see Judd Nelson in a brilliant performance. I want to see Molly Ringwald. When I put on a Sam Raimi film, I want to turn my brain off completely. I want to turn off everything about it and just kind of enjoy it. But what they both have is whimsy. They both have is a sense of nostalgia, especially in the Spider-Man films. And there's also a reason that Homecoming feels very much like a John Hughes film with a few shades of the Raimi trilogy thrown in there, because that's actually a really wonderful kind of combination. The chemistry of those two, I really liked Homecoming, by the way, but the chemistry of mixing those two filmmakers to create something new on top of what they've already laid down, that's a smart idea. Haymaker King. This was a tough one. It was a tough one because like, damn, where do I go? It was hard to frame it, and the only way to frame it is from an honest perspective. I honestly love The Breakfast Club. You could probably sense the change of passion, my modality changed. I was completely into The Breakfast Club. But yeah, I love The Evil Dead, sure. But it's The Breakfast Club, man. It's pretty in pink. It's 16 candles. It's weird science. It's some kind of... And that's where John Hughes wins. Because what John Hughes does is what just happened there. He shocks me into a minor state of nostalgia for a few seconds, into a minor state of bliss for a few seconds while I'm thinking back on his films and going, oh fuck yeah. John Hughes forever, alright? Subscribe to this channel. If you have any versus suggestions, put them into the bottom below. You can do genres, movies, filmmakers, actors. I would love to make videos about them, pitting them off against each other, squaring them off civilly, comparing them, seeing what makes each one unique and all that sort of stuff. But definitely subscribe, and when you do subscribe, don't you forget about me, and make sure to check out my new videos when they pop up. So maybe click that bell, I don't know. That bell might be outdated soon. But just click it. We're the Breakfast Club. I don't think it ever happens. I don't think they ever have a superhero moment and go, we're the Breakfast Club. No, but we're the cook, we're the...